Hello my friends, how are you doing today? Today I am outside, it's a nice day and I want to introduce you to today's video. In the end I decided to publish first this metaphysical, spiritual video, and then I think I will go into that series of 4 videos. Today's video is maybe something that we already talked about, but there was something magical to me in this conversation with Athena Swaruu, where I felt like I suddenly really truly understand why they're insisting on this fact that there are no concept, that there are no densities and no parallel universes, it's all just one mass. Something clicked in me in this video, in this topic, and I truly understood it, I saw it, I perceived it. So I'm going to leave you with the video and then I'm going to see you at the end for some final comments. Originally in Spanish, 4th of April 2022.
Tina, a question. If you were to go with your ship to the future of Earth, you could only see what your frequency says or what the collective unconscious of the Earth dictates at the moment, right? But you could never tell us the year you went because of the time slip? And because maybe in the future they will change the terrestrial dates again because of some agenda, correct?
I can only go to possible futures, not to one or to the future. That's not how time travel works. I would have to see many variants, many futures, to then make a possible average.
I understand. It's just that people think that it's so easy. Go 25 years ahead, come back and say what you've seen. That would be very simplistic. And what you would see might have nothing to do with what we experience.
They are seeing things in a linear way. This is a whole topic. It's that the perception of the terrestrial population sees reality that includes time as something sequential, like a one-story house and distributed as one room after another, making a long house. That is the 3D perception. The 5D perception would be a house with many floors that not only has one on top of another, but has windows and doors that connect everything together, even on the floor and on the ceiling, where if you are in the room, you can look down to the floor and see what is going on below you, or look up and see what is going on above you as well. So a person thinking in 3D will not be able to even understand the psychology of 5D beings. And this has been one of the biggest challenges of this disclosure. And the higher you go in terms of misnamed densities, the harder it is to explain how reality works. And the harder it is for the average 3D population to understand the mentality and reality of people occupying those higher densities. And this is reflected in Yashi precisely. That's why she is so difficult and controversial all the time, so to speak. So this connects with what we always explain, that there are no densities or dimensions or parallel universes, being that all that is only valid from the point of view of a person's level of understanding in 3D. That is why many times our narratives do not fit with what is expected, or people see them as mistakes or incongruities or contradiction of ours. They are not. It is 5D thinking. There are no densities or parallel universes or anything like that. Everything is a mental state, the ability of each consciousness mind to incorporate within itself the stimulus called from the outside world. It is not. And process it for themselves to form their own idea that forms what reality is for them. That is why we say that the greater the existential density, the greater the complexity. Precisely because it is about the capacity of the consciousnesses to ingest or to incorporate data into themselves, and from there to form the idea of reality, as I said above. And then, by agreements of perception, more than one point of consciousness person will come together to form their own collective reality that will be in itself a density or parallel world. Because looking at things from the perspective of 5D beings, everything that happens on Earth or anywhere else does not obey only linear factors of simple cause-effect as described on Earth. That is correct from that perspective. But from a more expanded one, the causes and effects of any situation that in itself forms all of reality in the same way anyway, are the result of the interaction and influence of countless factors that 3D people cannot see or understand because they are outside of their understanding in other parallel universes. That is, any event has multiple explanations that come from multiple so-called parallel universes or timelines, which are averaged together to form a final effect that is seen as the end result in a specific event, which will only be specific to the one who observes it in that particular way. An event that in itself is just one more factor that combines with others to form the next. So, if all reality, everything that happens, is the average of the influence of many temporal lines or of many parallel universes that influence each other, then it means that everything is a single mass, without isolated parallel universes or temporal lines. Being that such concepts are merely the product of the limited human mind and are only applicable to its 3D point of view. Because from the point of view of 5D thinking, that described above, all the temporal lines and all the parallel universes seen from 3D, for 5D people, are only data or simplistic points of view of those who do not see what happens in those other timelines. We do not see that neither timelines nor parallel universes exist. The only thing we see are ranges of perception, from where to where a person can see, perceive, and understand. We observe this also empirically with what happens with extracted people, who suddenly understand and remember multiple variants of their previous lives on Earth and outside, all intertwined, explaining their current lives. I must also say that what we see or perceive as the now, what empirically surrounds you, who you are and what you are thinking, is the result of infinite lines or universes or variants of you with other decisions, all averaging into who you are today. I could go on and on with this topic, and it can be explained with mathematics by linking this to stellar navigation. But yes, I want to say that the problem we all have where we start writing about a topic and end up with extremely large sentences trying to describe everything all at once is a symptom of this 5D understanding of the world around us, being that we have a hard time describing a single thing in a simple or simplistic way without getting into side topics that try to explain the why of everything. This often causes us to be difficult to understand, and it seems that we contradict ourselves when we only try to explain another point of view or another level of what we are trying to share. Another day. Okay, but one question. If talking about other parallel lines is just 3D product, for you, where do other Swaroos live? Or other Roberts and Goshas, for example? If it is not another timeline, what would you call it? If someone dies here but still lives in another timeline, what would you call that place? Not another timeline? Because it is understood that it is just one mass from more expanded level, but from below it must be called somehow. What would you call it? Because it sounds too long to say, I went to another point of attention in another existential frequency. Because if we extend the argument, we could also say that just as there are no timelines, there are no other points of attention either. I feel that it is not so bad to say timeline, at least to understand each other, since time refers to perception of consciousness, so I see the word time correct here. And line, because from the point of view of that point of temporal attention, there is an experience of a certain sequence of life, because otherwise, how to call it? From the position of above, there are no lines, and a living person does not contradict a dead one. Here it is seen or observed as variants of situations, living or dead, something like Schrödinger's cat. Not as whole timelines in block, as in the terrestrial concept, being that only isolated situations are observed at the limit of what can or could be seen or observed that is different from the original. I speak of timelines as such for lack of better words, due to linguistic limitation. There is no direct translation. They are new concepts for the Earth.
How did you like the video? I really liked it. It was short but sweet, and really there was something in those words, something in the explanations that illuminated suddenly my understanding of how it works, that there is just one mass of reality. And I really like this example of Athena where she was describing the house, like here in 3D. Our reality is so sequential, and perception of time is so simple and unilateral, and we are living in this one house, one-story house, and there is a room, and then there is another room and another room, and it's like one big long room. And then in 5D, the way they see it, is that there is a multi-level house with various rooms and apartments on top of each other, and then there are windows not only on the sides, but there are windows also in the ceiling and on the floor, and you can see what's going on below you, and you can see what's going on the sides, and you can see what's going on above you. So this is how it becomes all interconnected, and the reality and the elements running through those other realities are interconnecting with yours, and you can see below you and how it's affecting you above. And that's how they perceive not only time but the whole reality. And that's why it's sometimes so difficult to understand Yasky, and it's difficult for her to express herself also, because she is not only 5D but even somewhere beyond that, where the reality is even more complex, because the more we raise becomes more and more complex. And that's why when they speak, this was also mentioned by Athena here, when they speak, sometimes they begin a sentence, especially if it's to explain some kind of a concept. They begin a sentence and then they add more side concepts, and the sentence becomes long and very complicated. Sometimes one sentence is like the whole paragraph. So that's why, because they have this multi-complex, multi-story house, rooms on the sides and rooms below and above you, mentality, and it's all connecting, it's all interrelated for them and important to explain the concept. That's why sometimes it's maybe even difficult to understand some of the explanations, because the sentences are so long. And this example of the house, it relates also perfectly to the idea that there are no densities and no parallel universes, it's all just one mass. And it really clicked with me. There was something in this video, in the explanations, in her wording, that I truly understood it. It's like you are living in a small portion of the forest, and for you, that small portion of the forest is a forest. You don't know that there is a forest on the other side of the mountain. For you, that's another forest. You don't see that your portion of the forest is actually part of the larger forest. So you are living in this individualistic, separated, isolated part of the forest, and you think that's the forest. And then you have a drone, and you put that drone in the air, and the drone starts to go higher and higher, and you're actually seeing, wow, actually what I thought was a forest, it actually connects with other forests. And there is like interconnection, and the bugs and butterflies and the mosquitoes come from one part to another, and they feed here and they feed there. There are squirrels running around, and it's all forming to be one huge forest. And you only see it when you go on your drone and you see that actually your small part that you thought was a forest is actually a part of a larger forest, and there is in reality just this one huge forest. And this is the same with the supposed timelines. We are here and we are only perceiving what's going on here, especially in this very sequential way. So we don't see that in the so-called other timelines, other parallel worlds, what's going on there, the elements that sustain and are occurring in those places are also interacting and influencing, merging with us here. And that inability to see that's what makes us perceive like they are other worlds, other realities, other timelines, because our perception is locked onto this one only. But as we expand, and that's what Svarunians can see, they can see what's going on in other timelines and those other so-called worlds. They can see that what's going on there influences what's happening here, like in this house, multi-story house, where you can see through the ceiling, through the floor, and you can see how what's going on there affects you here. You're not this isolated element where cause and effects are only happening within this individual bubble that you think you are at. but the cause and effect actually extends beyond your individual timeline and bubble, and sometimes the reason of something happening could have its roots somewhere else in the so-called parallel world or another density. But if you cannot see it, you perceive it as another density. But as you see it, as you expand and you incorporate those other events in those other timelines into yours, then you see that what you thought previously were other timelines is actually one timeline. It's your line. It's your line. It's just that you didn't see it before. You didn't see the roots and cause and effects and those events influencing each other. You saw it as something separate. But as you incorporate those other elements into your reality, then your line expands. Well, if your timeline expands, then it means there was no line in the first place. That what you call a timeline is just a range of perception. It's just how much of that reality you incorporate into yourself and perceive, and how much of it you make it to form your reality. Because in the end, there is no lines, there is just one mind, one source, one self. So it's amazing how, I don't know, through this short video I was able to truly grasp this and see that, yeah, there are no timelines. And especially because, like Athena said, and like I said already before, everything that happens in those other timelines is affecting you here, and you are like this average, so to speak, a singularity point of all these other places, locations, and variants of you. So if that's the case, then it's only logical that you are not living in a separate timeline. You are only perceiving a small portion of reality, and you call that your timeline. But when you start to realize that those other lines affect you as well, and other variants and other versions and all that, then it's only logical that there was never a timeline to begin with, that it's all just one mass. You are just one big, huge mass of consciousness, and we are just at these small points within this one mass. They're like perceiving themselves as separate, and they call what's going on in other points of itself other timelines. But it's just an illusion, it's just a game. So it's amazing. I also have to say that this, even though Athena says this is a 5D thinking, my impression is that it's more even of a Svarunian thinking. Yes, Taygetians are aware of this, they are very aware of this, but from my experience with them, I'm not sure they are fully bringing this into their everyday life or everyday understanding of reality. I think it's more of this Varunian thinking, so 5D thinking, yes, and higher. And I can't even imagine how Yaski perceives things, and how she feels, and how hard it is for her to interact with us, these little points that are still perceiving themselves as separate timelines, whereas she, from that higher drone perspective, she can see us all forming just one mass. So it's all very fascinating. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. I did. That's why I decided to share it with you. And I think the next video, well, I think I'm gonna go into the four video series on navigation, teleportation, ether, and all kinds of really cool stuff. And then after that, I'll continue with Saturn. So thank you very much. I'm gonna go. There are a lot of mosquitoes. Bongo is waiting for me at home. So enjoy the rest of your day, of your night, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.